please message in the chat. I do have Cam, who's our tech guru, sorting on stuff. So he'll be able to fix it, hopefully. So, purpose of this webinar, introduction into performance analysis. The big thing for me is I wanted different speakers and different people who've come from different backgrounds. So for me, I was quite privileged from the start of analysis to have access to all the systems. And here at Orlando, I have access to pretty much most of the top of the line equipment. However, the people I've got on the call, so Rob Williams is head of coach development at Shrewsbury. He was also one of the pioneers in setting up BRM solutions with me. Curbs, or Carl Kirby to give him his full title. He's under 18s coach at Walsall, but also fronts up their analysis program. And then Connor Chalmers, who is currently the analyst at Birmingham City Women, and also a student at University of Wolverhampton studying sports coaching with an interest in performance analysis. So there's lots of different experiences and variants, and Rob's sort of going to lead it to try and get the answers you guys would want from a questions point of view, and we've come up with some questions and some examples for everyone to show forward. So BRM as a company, just quickly, these are some of the people we've worked with. So we vary, and like I could add 10 other clubs on this, like Stourbridge Town, Howes Owen, but these are the ones that the big corporates like to see on the front of the website. So obviously Orlando Pride and Orlando City over here in America, Bristol City Women, Ellen White, who some of you may know was the star of the Women's World Cup, and she's on a lot of the front for our Twitter, alongside Huddle, which you'll learn a bit more about in this talk. So I'm going to hand over to Rob now, who's going to go through sort of hosting and the webinar aspect of the thing, because he's hosted about 20 million of these, if you've seen his Twitter recently. So Rob, over to you, mate.
Beautiful. Just flip the slide on for me, Ben, so I can see what's what. So yeah, just to my involvement really in this is going to be fairly brief, hopefully, because the other guys are far more, one, knowledgeable and two, experienced in terms of analysis than I am. And they've tried to pitch the webinar and the information they're going to give very much at a sort of introductory level to analysis. Those of you that are involved in the game and Twitter users and that sort of thing, you'll know that there's 1,000,001 webinars flying around at the minute, a lot of which are really excellent, some real good content, and a lot of the analysis stuff that's been around sort of the last couple of weeks has been very much sort of high end. So this is, I think, designed to give people hopefully some real insight into how these boys sort of develop their analysis skills, where it started, where it's finished, and maybe where it's going next. But also, from my point of view, as someone who's in a position who works with coaches and supports coaches and employs coaches, analysis is becoming more and more prominent in the role and what we expect our coaches to be able to do. So some of the stuff, one, could be beneficial for me, but also I think is prevalent for coaches who are working at across levels of the game with limited experience. So first question is on the screen, look, and the guys might share some stuff from their own desktops and stuff. Kyle, you start off with a little bit of that, mate. Just introduce yourself and a bit about what you're doing now, where you're at, and maybe a little bit about where it started.
Yeah, so I'm at Walsall Football Club as a PD professional development phase coach. Previous to that, and my journey into working with the under-18s was working within the foundation, then into the youth development phase, and then during that, sort of to add more value to myself and the way the analysis was really picking up pre-EPPP, I sort of looked into that, thought, how am I going to be different to other people, and what can I add into my locker? So the analysis side I thought was really beneficial for me, and like looking back and where I'm at now has been massive. My previous experience, like I say, is working in the youth development phase, but then I had 2 years with the first team with James Troop, and worked very closely with Dean Smith and Richard O'Kelly, who were also massively for the analysis side. So that really helped me in terms of where I am and how I work now. And part of that as well was doing sort of scout reports as well. So while I was working part-time in the academy, I'll be going out watching first team games, giving in scout reports, but I'll also be looking to get feedback and what was good and where I could improve. And then the opportunity was to come and do some sort of live coding, and it was more opposition based, and then it sort of took off from there. And in that time, we were working with Prozone, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with like Y Scout and Sportscode.
Just a quick one from me, and just for people in the call, if you've got questions, stick them in the chat, and Cam will share those. Just for you, Curbs, when you first got into kind of coaching and where you're at now in terms of coaching, at the time, were you like aware that analysis was going to play such a big part in what you do?
Yeah, I think probably the club I'm at has always been tight in terms of like it's well managed in terms of finance, and you sort of have to think outside the box. And I'll try and I've tried to sort of summarise, and I'll show you later with some ideas with what we've worked and how and where we're at now. But I always thought it'd be big, and again, it sort of adds to your locker in terms of if you can understand, if you can present game plans and opposition analysis, or just get yourself around the software and confident with the software, it certainly adds value to your coaching. And like I say, like the sort of pre-EPPP, the sort of data was really, really picking up. So I think clubs will possibly go down more of like a data analyst, and the coaches will be, having to do the analysis side themselves.
Yeah, agreed. Connor, we've not heard from you yet. Just share a bit about like where you're at now and what you're doing now, and your role in terms of Birmingham Women in particular.
So I'm first team analyst at Birmingham City Women. My focus is more on opposition individuals, looking for goalkeepers, all right, strikers, looking at each player's weak points, strengths, just so you can work out a bit better stats-wise, and deciding who we play based on matchups. Just looking any way we can get that extra 1% out of video and stats analysis.
Brilliant. And who's that driven by, Connor? Who kind of drives what it is that you're looking for? Is it you, or is it the coaches?
A lot of it is my doing. It's just getting it down, filtering what I find to the coaches, and then what we then deliver to players is then decided by the coaches.
Okay, brilliant. And Ben, I know you've sort of briefly talked about where you're at now. Just sort of, what's the journey been like from wherever it was to where you are now?
So hope you can all hear me okay. So the journey started at Birmingham City Women. So in a similar role to what Connor was doing as a sort of volunteer internship. Then that grew to becoming head of analysis department for a department that didn't really exist at the time. So it was again building that. And I was quite privileged that at the time I worked with a manager called Mark Skinner, who really wanted to push Birmingham sort of above their weight and above their structure in a way, in the sense that we were pushing for Champions League, up until the point where Mark got poached to come to Orlando Pride. At the time, I was currently in my final year of a computer science degree, so I was not in a position to follow him, but luckily it all turned out okay that I was able to join him. And again, sort of start again really here. Like, analysis hasn't been a thing, and it's a bit behind the times in certain aspects of America. Some of their sports, NFL, NBA, they're the best in the country. But here, it's a bit behind the times. So again, it's trying to get them up to speed with the latest software and methods and methodology, and also working in cohesion with the coaches, which has been a massive thing for me.
Brilliant. So listen, I can't see your screen, but it's fine. I'll go with some questions. So any of you can kind of jump in on this. In terms of your kind of development, in terms of use of analysis, what was it like at the very start? What sort of systems were you using? How basic was it or wasn't it, depending on where you started, compared to maybe where it is now, where you're all clearly using a whole range of different bits of software and whatever else? What did it look like sort of when you very first started? Kyle, you can perhaps jump in on that as a start.
It was literally notational stuff. So looking at, and I don't know whether I'll be able to, if I share.
If someone else is unshares, then you can share.
Should
Okay.
be all yours now.
So I've just sort of gone. Let me just. Can you see that or not?
I can't see anything, but you lot crack on.
I can't, mate. So just
Let me. Oh, here we go.
I can see that. Good work.
So this is sort of examples of how it started, real basic things. So we would. Can you see this now, Rob? Yeah.
I can see it, mate. I've got it yet.
So we'd look at simple things in terms of where goals were scored and against in terms of areas, and how does that relate to your training in terms of the practices you put on, in terms of where the goals are scored and conceded from. So you could simple things like that. Goalkeeper visuals, whether you split the goal in thirds, quarters. I'm sure Paul, you'd give information on that as well. Putting the pitch into channels, so or in terms of the boxes, and they much spoke about zone 14 in terms of in possession, out of possession tasks. We would look at linked to the goal scoring. So where we would look at where was the where we're regaining the ball, for instance, where was the final pass. Areas of regains, and then sort of breaking it down to further into there, and then sort of the coach side of it was either again with your own players, again sort of like looking at what sort of feedback did you give across the four corners, or in terms of the coach education side, the sort of feedback you're giving, and then sort of heat mapping who you spoke to. So that was sort of the real basic ones that and easy visuals for players that we started from.
Okay, I'm just curious then. So how did that look, Curb? So if you're on the bench observing a game, was it you doing the notation analysis? Was it somebody else? What did it look like?
So this would be more after games and during games. So when we would have a laptop with sports code on, doing it live with a wide angle, and then we were doing the coding from there. But at the time, Richard O'Kelly was sort of interested on where goalkeeper distribution was, areas of regains and things, and we would use this pitch, the 18 boxes, in terms of where we were regaining the ball, and in terms of how they wanted it to the game plan, whether it was a full press, mid block, low block.
Brilliant. And I'm just to add on to that then. So you would then gather a load of data around some of those things. So it might be how many regains in zone 5 or whatever, if you're playing with a deeper block, say. What happened with that information then? How was it shared? What did that look like? And what was the impact of that information?
So during, let's say, half times and things, you'd be quickly down. Both Dean and Richard, they would always spend the first 5-7 minutes away from the players, and they would be looking at clips that they've either sent up to the gantry via the headpiece, and they'd look at those or clips we've suggested, and then you would have a quick look at in terms of like the game plan, like I said, and then just be interested in looking at certain areas, or how they thought the opposition would play, and knowing our potential vulnerable areas, have they spotted them, and are they working to them, and then trying to counteract that. So it was just pretty much like dead really, really simple little tallies, and just looking at areas. But obviously, the thing that these sort of things are all input based. So in terms of reliability, you've got to make sure if you're doing things like that, particularly the live stuff, you've got to be accurate. But it's just having a go and getting used to speed and practicing with games on your laptop and things.
And how important, before I let the other boys jump in, how important was it to make sure? So, for example, if you were doing an observation of a coach using those 5 coaching styles, intervention strategies that you've got listed at the bottom there, how important is it being really clear on what that means? So when you are tallying specific aspects, that you know exactly what you're looking for. So we all know what command means, and we all know what guided discovery means, as an example. How important is it being really clear on what those criteria mean, so that we all know we're looking at the same thing?
To make sure it's valid to what you're doing, and it's got to be equal across. So if a head you know, yourself as head of coach, and you want to make sure you're looking at the coaches across with the same judgment, and everyone else appreciates that what is guided discovery. Yeah. So I think that's massively important. But I think that will stem down from what your sort of coaching philosophy is as a club. What is, does it change throughout the phases, or are they really, really clear they only want this and this? And then if you're working against that, you can be conflicting.
So look, that's, although fairly basic compared to probably what you're doing now, that's still fairly kind of detailed, isn't it? Ben, have you got some examples of stuff that either you've used or that people use that arguably is even kind of more basic than that, in terms of tools for observation and analysis of some data from games or training?
From my point of view, I was sort of teaching myself as I was going when I first started. So again, it was using the resources that were available, YouTube examples, and I was privileged that I acquired Sports Code from a very early part of my career. So initially, I'm just going to share my screen now.
So I'm just thinking there might be lots of people in the chat who perhaps haven't got access to things like Sports Code and stuff. So
yeah. So I used Conversation. So just really basic, looking at individual players.
Okay. So talk us through that and what that means.
So literally, for example, if we look at this, if Berger, who was the goalkeeper at the time, got the ball, having a look at all their individual possessions. So whether that meant using Sports Code or just going through iMovie, I don't know, Rob, you've got some good examples on this for later on, is just chopping up all the goalkeepers' individual actions. Because at the time, Birmingham City had nothing like that. The players were just given a game and a bit of pen and paper. So
So what was expected of players then, if they were given a filmed game and they were given a pen and paper, what was expected of the players, and what was the value in doing it like that? Or was there no value in it at all?
For some players there was, because they were students of the game, and for some players there wasn't. Okay. So they didn't want to watch 94 minutes back, especially if they lost. Okay. However, the big thing for me was going forward was that it was individual clips. So their time of watching went down from 90 minutes to a 12. So they'd watch themselves. So they'd find a lot more buy-in, and it's easier to criticise yourself than others. And that's what we found very early doors with Birmingham.
Okay. So what sort of things would you look at for, I don't know, pick any of those players, pick Aoife Mannion, who's number 25 on there. What sort of things would you be looking at in terms of her performance? What would some of the criteria be?
Looking at stuff in possession, out possession, shots, goals, basic statistics and stuff like that. So initially when I was first starting out, I was told to keep it really simple and then grow as the weeks went on. So it was, again, really simple, and then letting the player lead what they wanted to work on.
Okay, brilliant. And so in terms of that then, how was that shared, or how did the players share with you what they'd seen, or how did you share with the players what you'd seen?
So we had a Google Doc, which is free. So we had a Google Doc for every player. All the coaches and that player were on it, and they could write notes from everyone.
Okay. So and if coaches haven't even got access to that kind of system, is that fairly easy to set up just yourself with a Word document and a video camera or an iPhone or whatever else?
Exactly. So a basic Word document and a video camera. Like I've got one here. This is a cheap filmmaker's camera. £100 off Amazon.
Okay.
You can film games, you can use your iPhone, GoPros, anything. I know I've done a lot of stuff with Ross Smith, who's on the call in the SDYFL. So they've come up with some really creative ways on the cheap.
Give some examples of those sort of things. What sort of things have they done in those sort of grassroots leagues?
So I've seen parents film with their iPhone. So one parent does the first half, one parent does the second half. Yeah. And then they all airdrop them around to each other at the end. if you've got like any media, like I've seen brothers, sisters of players on the team who want to be media students.
Yeah.
So they've had a bit of fun, like added some commentary on top of it.
Yeah.
Again, you can still use that for analysis.
Yeah.
So
Like
lots of
that.
different things like that.
And what are some of the challenges with that? So if you've got someone filming from the side of a pitch, what are some of the potential issues or challenges with getting games filmed in that sort of format?
So usually the big thing that always comes back is data protection. So that's massive. So there's other people on the call more qualified than me probably to talk about this, but getting written permission from all the parents of the kids if under the age of, I believe, 18. So, and I know if it's an academy, I know you have like a prerequisite which they all sign.
Yeah.
But if it's AFC Sudbury versus Dudley Town, then it's a bit different.
Potentially, I think you're right.
We've got a question for Connor. Corey Johnson asks, when working in women's football, what trend did you find when you looked at different teams or oppositions and how they set up?
Looking at the WSL, there's a multitude of different ways everyone sets up. You've got Chelsea, you've got quite a few strong attacking teams. There's not many that defensive wise, they're more open and quite a counter-attacky, like quite prone to counter-attacks, but no one actually uses them. It's more of a possession-based game. Pretty much every team looks at either possession or a deep block, looking throughout it, and it's just trying to identify the players from each team that are going to help them create those opportunities or where you can kind of counteract them.
Let me ask you a question, Con, just off the back of that. How much time of your week is spent focusing on Blues yourselves, and how much time is spent focusing on the opposition? And at what point in the week might that happen? So, do you start the week looking at yourselves, and do you build towards the game when you start looking at what they do, or what does that look like?
So that starting of the week, we go like match day minus 2, 3. Will be focused on us first to start with.
Yeah.
And then we'll go more into focus on us improving. Then a few days after, go into in depth on the opposition and work in training on the opposition, sort of ways to stop them. Then we jump into set pieces for and against. And then obviously game day, and then it's then going back, looking at the game after that and reviewing the game.
And how is that delivered, Khan? I'm just curious, how is that information delivered to who by? So is it you? Is it the coaches? Is it a combination of both? And what's the format for that? Is it player meetings? Is it shared online in this kind of format? How's that done?
So a lot of it's all online on Huddle. They have their video sharing platforms. Everyone can see that. And then we'll do player meetings. They vary depending on what we feel is the most effective way of getting information across. And most of the time it is group, big team discussions and coach-led. But we will have the odd time where it's player-led to try and get a bit more buy-in.
And do you think that's effective? Do you think that's the most effective way of doing it? Or if you maybe had the choice, would there be other ways that you would do it?
I think the big part of getting the player-led, I think there's a lot of players that don't buy into it if you just telling them what's going on. I think a lot of people disengage with it all, so it's just trying to work in the best way to keep them engaged.
Brilliant. And what about you, Kyle, in terms of at Walsall? How's that information shared with players, and what does that look like?
So I off on a match day, I'll review the game. I'll usually split it up on a first half on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning, then watch the second half in the Sunday afternoon or evening, and then we'll be training on the Monday, and then we'll try and feed back to the players of a Tuesday, which will be sort of hot. Again, it's not just a negative tool. We try and sort of reinforce good practices and what we wanted going into the game. Did we do it? What went well, and what we could improve on. In the post match, the players are encouraged to. It's an open floor, so we want to encourage them to take a little bit of ownership with that, and have debates, and we'll pose questions, and sometimes just wait to see what they say, or we'll throw a few curveballs in there. Or we have actually got the players to present. So we've had the players in units, defenders, midfielders, and forwards, and they've watched the game back as a unit, and then they've got chosen 5 clips to present back to the group, which sort of coming. I think we need to do more of that, and I think it's gone well for when we've done that. And then sort of more from a Thursday, or as the week's progressing, we'll get a couple of games on the opposition, but we're not. It's more about what we do than the opposition, because particularly at under 18s level, the personnel can change, and it's very difficult to predict. Although you can more or less predict the style and how they're going to do what they're going to do, it's not as reliable as maybe as a first team environment. So we just make sure it's about what we do. We can control what we do, and try and get a good performance. And then we'll maybe look at set pieces in a separate meeting.
Brilliant. There's a couple of questions in the chat, but I'll jump onto Ben first. Is anything different that you do or have done in the past in terms of sharing information with players, Ben, and what that's looked like for you?
So I follow a similar sort of mould to Connor. Obviously, being in elite women's football, we work a lot of the opposition. I'd say one thing that's different over here is the time frames and travel.
Okay.
So we could be playing New York on the Saturday, Seattle on the Wednesday, and then back in Orlando on the Saturday. So
right.
A lot of emphasis goes on team meetings that in England we used to do like 35 minutes to an hour. We have to be a lot shorter and concise.
Right. Okay.
And also one thing that's big for me is passing some of the information off to the coaches. So the goalie coach delivering with his goalkeepers just as like a private sort of meeting, or an in-possession coach and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because
Brilliant.
in these short time frames, we're in hotels, so we don't always get the benefit of a classroom where we can all sit and present.
Yeah.
Which in an ideal world is what we want, but we don't always get that.
Yeah.
And again, like Connor said, a lot of offline learning for the players.
So I'm going to jump into a couple of questions, and this might not follow what the planned questions were, but that's fine. So James has thrown one in the chat. There's, and any of you can answer this. Are there any courses that you can go on? And if they are, what are they? And what would you suggest? But then maybe if there's not, what would you suggest to people who maybe want to upskill themselves in terms of analysis and various bits of software and whatever else? Any of you can throw that one in.
Shall I go? I'll start things off.
Yeah.
I think there isn't, besides like a master's degree, and there's I think a couple of universities in the country that do specific performance analysis degrees. I know Cardiff Met is one of them. I know it's included on, and it's funny because we've actually got a lecturer in sports coaching on the call. There's a lot of modules, so little segments inside degrees that include examples of performance analysis. But I go back to some advice that a good mentor told me right at the start. Get experience, like experience counts for a lot in football. So I know, for example, at Walsall, they invite interns to come film training and coaches. The Shrewsbury Town do the same. So experience for me, and then having to be able to go into an interview for a job and go, yeah, I've worked with delivering to players or delivering to coaches. And if you're able to get hands-on with the software. The other thing I'd say is, if you look online at the moment, there's a lot of free courses on like the Professional Scouts Association around performance analysis, which I know a few people have mentioned have been very good.
Is that the PFSA?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also Huddle, the software company that do the top line analysis stuff, Sports Code, which Curbs was talking about. I believe they've got some free courses on at the moment as well on the Huddle Academy. So they would be 2 points. And I'll happily, when we send the email out at the end, put some links to some relevant places. But
Brilliant.
For me, when I'm, like, for example, so I brought Connor into Birmingham when I was there. Connor had no experience, but he had a willingness to learn, to gain experience. So that was massive.
Brilliant. Connor, Kyle, anything you'd add into that?
I think obviously, if you're going down the sports coaching, I think that's going to be a massive part in again, my opinion with that is how the coach meets the analyst and the analyst meets the coach. I think that's going to get very, very close, if not be the same person. I think then you'll have more the people interpreting the data, which are at the highest level. So I think if a strong, if you're doing your coaching badges, I think that sort of shows your knowledge to a good level, and then like the guys studying at the university, and just try and round your knowledge up and try and, like Ben said, get experience. And it's about putting your time in. When I worked with the first team for 2 years, I did it off my own back, and it's what I put in to that, to go and watch the games, to put the time in, to learn off and just open to feedback, and just being open-minded, and just trying to learn as much as you can off anyone you can, either good things or bad things.
Brilliant. Connor, anything different that you think is worth mentioning?
I think a lot of it's just getting out there and having a go, going to places. A lot of academies willing to take people on to just help out and just learn from there.
Absolutely, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's probably answered some of the stuff the question that Natalie's put on around how actually you go about getting some opportunities to go and perhaps support and work in clubs and so on. Ben, can you perhaps share, and this might be moving ahead of ourselves on the questions a little bit, can you perhaps share some examples of the sort of pieces of software and things that exist that people can use to upskill themselves that don't cost a fortune and are fairly user-friendly?
Yeah, that's no worries. I'm just going to jump out of here and hopefully
no worries.
Share some stuff. So there's lots of different variations of software we can use. If you're privileged enough to have an Apple device, so iPad, iPhone, Mac, there's a great bit of software that I know Rob uses loads called iMovie, which is basically a free video editor. So you're able to import MP4s, stuff you filmed off a camera. So you can import media in. So find it on your computer. For example, I've got a goal here of Lukaku's. And able to add that in. So, and create a new project. So, and I appreciate this may be a bit glitchy for some people. So find that Lukaku goal, I can drop it in. I can take the sound off of it, and I can add a title at the start of it, for an example. Just put goal, stuff like that. So lots of little things like that. So that is Apple specific.
If I just jump on that with you, Ben, because it's what I use predominantly. What about actually accessing the clips in the first place? So obviously, Kyle or Connor, feel free to dip in. Where do you access the clips from if this was the sort of thing you wanted to do?
So the best, like for me, I'm privileged in the pro game. We use stuff like Wisecout and Instat. I'm just going to jump onto YouTube here. And I've literally just typed in, and apologies if you can't see, and apologies, I've had to use the word soccer due to my location. I would never do that normally. But just full football games, and you can take these off of YouTube. We're not advising that as a company, obviously, for ethical reasons. But you're able to clip and crop off YouTube. You could then drop that into iMovie. So as an example, we did a piece around our forwards, and we just YouTube goals from the World Cup, Women's World Cup. Took the video and then worked with our forwards around that. So if it's certain, and people do clip profiles of Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. So if you're working with your wingers or your forward players, and even being able to show them a clip off YouTube could be really powerful. Or send a link via your parents on email. Please watch this. I know a lot of people are bored with watching stuff to do at the moment.
And you can literally do stuff on your phone, on your iPad or your laptop, can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
So another piece of software was, this is free. There is Android and iPhone apps for this. It's called Tactical Pad. So this gives you like an online sort of tactical board, coaches board, and it may crash because it doesn't like working with Zoom. Here we go. So we can see that you can create and move, and this is completely free. You can pay for a pro version, but so you could send images, and you can just screenshot this on your computer.
Yeah.
And then
you can add those pictures into iMovie, right?
Yeah. So as an example, if I was to screenshot that, just quickly, then I could drop that screenshot in here. So now if I play my movie, it's got goal, screenshot of what's just happened.
Yeah.
And then into the movie.
Yeah. And that's really easy and fairly straightforward to produce and then share with players, isn't it?
So yeah.
Is Longo Match something you've used or come across?
No, I think Curbs is more better to talk on that one than me.
Yeah. Kyle, you've used Longo Match, which is another free resource, is that right?
Yeah, so when we we currently use Sports Code within the academy, and then I've used like Prozone, Instat and things. But yeah, so we started off with Longo Match, but I think just as a time saver, while if you're filming the game, is noting that if you're making notes and timings. Yeah. Is key, and then you can just look back at what did you perceive live? Was it correct? And sometimes what you feel in game wasn't actually what happened, and vice versa. So I think during the game, making use of it and making use of a co-coach, which I think is important. That you don't both have, one of you can be making notes in the game. And then when you drop the movie into iMovie, you can quickly get to the clips and export what you want. But yeah, Longo Match, they do. There's a free, I think there's a trial period on which is for the application on your laptop. And then I'll show you, they've got I'll try and, I don't know if you'll be able to see that. But if you go onto the App Store, if you're on your Apple, what you can do on your phone is import a video, and it gives you a generic tagging, so you can just literally put the video in. This was just a goal edit we did, and then what you can do is just literally just touch, and it's got little instances there, and then that'll put you in a folder for you to look at.
And is that Longo Match, Kyle?
That's Longo Match on the iPhone, but what you could do is have it on the iPad. And if you look at sort of tripods, they'll house the iPad for you and use that one. So that's quite good if you import the movie straight onto your iPad or have it on your iPhone. The other thing, what was really useful for it as well, is you can actually do live things on there.
Okay.
Just 1 second. So what it will do is you'll use your camera, and in the same, it will give you a free template. You can edit the template. So again,
you can live tag almost, yeah?
Yeah, so that was just sort of in my lounge, just having a go with it. So you can move it around, and then while that's on your screen, this coding window comes in front. I will try and just one more time to see if it will.
But it's definitely something that's worth having a little play with and a look at if it's something you're interested in doing.
You can send some screenshots out afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's massive because what happens is it's a normal camera, what you would see when you're taking normal video footage. The coding window comes in front, and you can just literally code away little clips, and then you can just edit, view your clips that way. So if you're looking at,
you could show it all off your phone and stuff as well to players.
Yes, and you can export as well. So if you're working on little one-to-one practices, if you're coaching or whatever, you can instantly have a go at that, and then it's there ready on your phone. And like Ben said, if people are filming using the camera and sharing it then you've got footage ready to go. So that's definitely, and that's free. That's totally free. The other piece of software is you can get the tactical pad on your phone as well, but you've also got Dartfish Easy Tag, which looks like that, and that's just a tagging. So if you save a pen and paper, you can set up a coding window of your choice. You can have, I think it's about 18. Let me just see if you can get this on it.
Yeah, I used Easy Tag a little bit for my A license. Yeah.
So you can set it up, start the time, and then just code away, and then the timings are kept for you. And then once you've saved it, it'll give you like little quick percentages and things. So if you're looking at final third entry, shots on, it'll give you a quick little snapshot. So there's a basic tool to have a go with. I think longer match and tactical pad is good to have a little bash at.
Brilliant. So look, I'm just aware of. So just to answer Corey's question, it's Dart, D-A-R-T, fish.
Yeah, to Dartfish. So that the Dartfish is it's Dartfish Easy Tag, and you'll find out.
He's just replied. I'll put it in the chat for him.
Yeah.
So he's got it. I'm gonna throw the next one to you. I'm just aware of time, and there's some questions popping up. So, Connor, you start off with this question that's appeared. So Simon's asked about what data and KPIs you find most useful and impactful with players.
With players, a lot of it is their success rate. Their main focus is on how good they've been. A lot of the time, if it's kind of negative, they kind of don't want to listen to it and don't believe it. But being able to back it up with the videos afterwards is quite key. So if it is showing a poor success rate, you can then prove it and then look through it and see why.
Just clarify for me on that then. So give me some real specific examples. So if you were looking at a centre back, say, what specific things in possession might you gather data on for that centre back as an example?
In possession, a lot of that focus on passing and receiving. So it'd be how many touches they've had, how many passes have they completed, and then the range of passes.
Okay. And that might vary from one centre back to another potentially?
Yeah, depending on who's playing there. Some are better on the ball, then one might be better out of possession.
Brilliant.
That's where we'll focus more on for them.
Ben, just because you're working with some elite players at the minute, what does your data and KPIs look like?
So I'll give an example. I work individually with Ellen White, who's a forward, number 9. So again, the point around what Connor said is they always want to argue when their numbers aren't high enough. So that's massive. And I can actually share something over now. I've had permission to share this. So as an example, this is like an update sheet that me and Ellen keep updating. Obviously it's stopped at the moment because of COVID-19. So this is her stats.
Okay.
So this is the type of statistics we're using for a centre forward.
It's really small. Give me something, talk me through a little bit of it.
Yeah, so we've got goals, assists, chances, success rates. They want to know the percentages, the passes and everything. So lots of things like that around the forward. And one thing that's with Ellen is she's had a lot of injuries. So it's, again, stringing a run of games together for her. So her stats are better when she's played 3 or 4 on the bounce, and then she becomes one of the most prolific strikers in the world. So for me, like having the clips to back this up as well. So looking at opposition goalkeepers and some stats around them as well.
Go on, talk us through that bit of analysis you've got there.
So if I go back to this one, it's better. So these are clips of a goalkeeper for Arsenal, and then this is her shot map of the goalkeeper. So again, I know Paul's on the call as a goalie coach. Forwards see a lot of benefit in this. So they can sort of pick up indicators on which way to shoot. And I know for Ellen, we did this for the Women's World Cup, which was very prolific for her. I was actually in France with the national team, so I got to spend time with her individually doing that type of thing.
Brilliant. Just do me a favour, because I'm very aware of time. Just flick the questions back up for me, Ben, if you would.
Yeah, 2 seconds, mate.
Because we're fairly close to the 10-minute mark.
Cool.
If anyone else has got any other... Here, Mark's, just while we're doing that, Mark Simpson's thrown a question in. How do you use analysis to supplement training sessions? So do you record and analyse training as well as games? Kyle, perhaps one for you.
Yeah, so I'm probably some 18s coach of who uses the analysis side. Yeah, the training side, when we do record the training, we're fortunate to have a HiPod, and we attach a GoPro to that, and we'll put it in a wide angle so it's not manned. But prior, if we didn't have that, and what sort of the other age groups have used, we've used a speaker stand. I think Rob still use it now with your coaches. So it gives you about 8 foot, do you reckon? 6.
Something
so
like that, about 8 feet.
Gives you a lot more height. We'll film with the GoPro, and then again we'll reflect on that, whether we're doing some specific individual or some unit work. We don't overkill the training, and we'll get GPS data, which we probably look more into than the video side. And that's probably more to manpower as well. We would probably film more training if we could.
Yeah. Ben, what about Orlando? What are you doing training wise?
So at Orlando, and actually this came from a testing at Warsaw with Cubs, but we use 3 drones.
Okay.
So we use drones to get the height, because we're not able to put any fixed cameras or any like iPods and everything like that in. So we have a drone with the goalkeepers that films at a height, and then 2 drones for the outfield. And then that's all coded by me. So I'll break down the session. So if they've done a rondos and then into a small-sided game, into a finishing practice, each individual session will have an individual movie. And then the coaches and myself will review that, and then we can obviously turn it around and feed it back to the players.
Yeah, I think the stuff Kyle mentions. Sorry, go on, carry on, Ben.
We also link that with GPS.
Yeah.
So looking at HSR versus number of touches and stuff like that for those interested in KPIs.
Yeah, I think coming back to your point, Curbs, in terms of the thing about getting some height.
Yeah.
If you can, in terms of what you're filming. Over the last couple of years, having done more and more of this, certainly with coaches, getting some height to give you some real perspective on what you're seeing is really, really important, I think.
Yeah, and just trying to get, if you are filming, get the height and try and get as much wide angle as you can. So not sort of, when you're watching games on the telly, it's quite ball and it's very, very close. It doesn't give you that perspective. So if you're having a go with any analysis software, if you go on like YouTube and actually if you type in BBC the World Cup wide angle, it gives you actually like the bird's eye view of games, which will give you a lot good practice of good angles and just open up the game.
Yeah, you certainly see a lot more, don't you, with a bit of height to give you that perspective.
Height is key within analysis.
Yeah. I've just rounded up some of these questions. Yeah, Anoush has asked, how important is set piece analysis, throw-ins, free kicks, corners, etc.?
Chalmers, you want to take that one, as you did a project on it?
Yeah, with pretty much as well, looking to get that extra 1%. We've looked at it. Most of our goals this season have come from set pieces. We haven't conceded many, so we spend 1 session a week purely analysis just on set pieces, trying to get creative. Quite an open floor, so players can get creative with any ideas they've got, especially attacking wise. Just with a team we've got, it's quite a small team most of the time, so we haven't got any aerial threats. So it's trying to be creative to allow them aerial threats to be able to go ahead the ball. So quite important for us. It's one of the biggest things we look at.
Brilliant. So I'm going to respond to someone's question in the chat, because we've covered something he's asking because he missed a bit. I'm going to jump a couple of questions because I think we've covered most of the things that we thought about. I'm very aware of the last sort of 7 or 8 minutes. start us off, Kyle, with a few sort of top tips that you might share with people in terms of how to get good at using maybe software and practicing, and what would be your one or two key top tips for people?
Watch games. Watch is really. I think you can sort of sit there watching a game and sort of letting it by, but try and really focus on the game. So try and pick a team. Try and break it down. Sort of what areas, what are they like in each third. Key plays, key relationships, and the game is massive. You'll also get, if you're on the coaching side of things, you'll get patterns of play. You'll see how, in terms of judging the distances within the game to make it relatable to your training is key. Having a go with the software. I think if you just don't beat yourself up if you're missing things, or I think the more you do it, the quicker you become at doing it, and the more coding you can do, and you'll just really dive in and get stuck into it. And then, but think about what can it add to you. So whether you're a coach or analyst, what extra percentages can you get? So who can you nick ideas off, and then try and dip in with other departments and how they might use it as well.
And would it be fair to say, Kyle, that certainly clubs like yourselves and like ours, and probably Paul, where you work, there's lots of opportunities for people to come and get, access to, volunteering and observing and gaining experience and stuff. Because actually, being smaller academies, Cat 3 academies, we kind of rely a little bit on some volunteers to help with stuff like this.
Yeah, I think the way the EPPP is put, clubs have to have a certain infrastructure of staff, and there's opportunities there. There's no quick way to the top. It's time and putting yourself out there, and building relationships, and don't be in a rush to try. If your end goal is working with the first team, for instance, don't try and be in a rush to get there. Try and get your craft and what you do and what makes you unique, and what can you add.
Yeah, Connor, what would be your top tips in terms of, because you're kind of recently involved in and are now working quite heavily in analysis. What would be your top tips for people who are looking to, one, get good at it, and two, get opportunities to do it more?
A lot of it trial and error, I think, is the biggest thing, and being willing to take anything on, just try to have a go, then getting as much feedback as possible and being open to that feedback. Just getting as many people, sharing to as many people that you can, to try to get different points of view. You might have to see something different, might find ways to do it differently. And then again, just try getting in touch with academies. Like say most Cat 3 ones will be willing to take someone on as a volunteer.
Brilliant. And Ben, what about you? What would be your kind of key 3 or 4 top tips? Because you are really heavily involved in it. What would be your key things for people?
I think there's a few for me. Is experience. So putting yourself out there, getting experience. Like, I was privileged in my first year of doing this. I did stuff with you, Rob, in your previous role at Shrewsbury. I did stuff with my university, Birmingham City Women. So especially like the lesser clubs are always going to want something different and something new. So like, for example, non-league clubs, I did a lot of work with Sporting Council, which was a non-league club to where I was near. And I know there's whole junior leagues that would love coaching and want to be coaches, and dad coaches who just want to make their son better. So like helping with their filming and stuff like that is awesome. The other tip is, don't be afraid to get it wrong. My first meeting at Birmingham City, I absolutely mucked it up a right one. Like I said, this player played left wing when she played right wing, and lots of different things. But you've got to get those experiences, and you've got to get in football. What I've learned, and it's a bit different in the academies, it is a results-driven business. In the end, I was in, so you got to be afraid to not be afraid to take your telling off from people above you, but they're doing it to help you improve.
I think you're right. I think you've just got to have a go, haven't you, and try stuff and see what works.
You got to have a go. You got to have a go. And again, your coaching badges help you with that. So I've done my level 1, 2, and 3 now, or UEFA B. So, and there's lots of don't be afraid to ask people on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Wouldn't mind spending half an hour on Skype with you. Like the first time I met Rob was in a university coffee shop, just having a conversation. And then it led to BRM Solutions and lots of other things. And same with Connor, Carl. Like, I think the big one for me is experience. And experience.
So I'm gonna finish with this. Will be the last question from Corey, and then I'll just share a couple of things from the chat before I'll let you wrap up, Ben. So Corey's asked for grassroots clubs who maybe don't have the extra staff. Is it important for a coach to look at analysing games, or is it mostly beneficial for top teams? Kyle, what's your thoughts?
I think massively analysis. But I think if you can add or get someone or volunteers who can film, then if you've got even particularly at grassroots, the life's just going to be very, very difficult to do and to achieve. So even if you have in the game, one game every other week, it's going to be better than no games. But I think it's important how you feedback. Don't just use it as a negative tool. I think you've got, particularly with the younger ages, you've got to really use it as a positive tool. And then the younger kids.
I've lost you for that last little bit there, mate.
Things you've been working. I said, hopefully, the things you've been working on in training, you can really just wants to see that. I'll show you just some quick. I'll share my screen again, and just the things for the grassroots, and they could possibly.
Yeah.
Which we've brushed on things, and for you to have a go at some software, which we spoke about. But I think it's definitely things you can definitely add, and it will add value to you as a coach and for your players, more importantly.
We will share this with you, by the way, if you're struggling to see Carl's screen. We'll send this out afterwards.
Brilliant. So look, Ben, I'm just aware we're just on time. Look, I'm going to hand over to you to sort of round things up a little bit.
Cool. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for attending. I want to say special thanks to Rob, Carl and Connor. Obviously, they're giving up their time here. So that they're giving up their time to educate you. We will be doing some more webinars. We've got one with Tony Elliott planned, one with some England Lionesses to getting a player's perspective on analysis. And then we're trying to link something in with a high-class rugby team. So they're sort of three things to bear in mind, but they're not all confirmed date-wise yet. So just keep an eye on our Twitter and our social channels for those type of things. Thank you all very much for coming. This is recorded, so we'll send this out tomorrow morning. I've got to give my tech guy, Cam, some plaudits and give him some time to put it together. So he's been keeping an eye on the chat and making sure it's all working. If you've got any questions, I'll just quickly share my screen again. All our Twitters are on there, so I think I've got all of them right. So feel free to drop us a message on there or email the BRM Solutions on the website. So, but again, we'll send this all out in sort of a thank you email to all of you. So
Brilliant.
From me, I just want to say thanks to Rob, Martin and Connor again, and thank you everyone for attending.
Brilliant. Thanks all. Feel free to message people direct if you've got any questions and bits and pieces. And I don't know if it's the right word, enjoy the rest of the lockdown if that's possible.
Yeah, stay safe everyone as well.
All the best.
Everyone.
Speak soon.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks for coming, everyone.